working for Briskr together with Marion, who you see also, and Marion is going to help us also in the back office. So if you get connection problems, anything else, do not hesitate to call Marion. I'm sure. I hope it's not going to happen. So we have a webinar today. I would say on a very important subject: life science health companies, startups, scale up, existing companies. It's a pretty complex business. All kind of matters, of course, about around the product, but also about the staff, the systems that you work with, etc., etc. And of course, there is an extra challenge now since well, about a month or three already, the Corona thing. So it's great that we have found Lizanne Jakobs to give us a presentation on growing your company quickly and stress-free. So I'm really myself also looking forward to learn how to run the company and the businesses in such a way that you got a bit less stress. Um, there's a few practical things I want to share with you. Lisanne, if you can open the slides.
Yeah, you should be seeing it now.
You see the people see it? Yeah, I see people nodding. So we have in principle, we have the video screen is on. I discussed with Lisanne and almost myself, if you can leave it open, we like it, but of course it's open to you to do that. Then questions, if you want to put questions, please use the chat function. I will pick it up. We will pick it up, and we'll ask you to unmute to ask your question. Um, and need be, if things wouldn't work, you can always also raise your hand, and we will see that one. So I think these are the most important practical things. So Lisanne, I'm sure you're going to introduce yourself. So I give the word to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, John. Um, I will. Let me just see. I can't seem to get to the next screen. That's always a good sign. So we just have to try and get to the. There you go. Hopefully you can see what today's webinar is going to be all about: growing your company quickly and stress-free, which John already explained was going to be today's subject. So what are we going to be talking about in the next hour or so? I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. I've already heard from some of you writers you started, but we're going to do a little poll as well to find out a little bit more about you guys. So I can tailor my webinar a little bit more around that. Why your job is so complex, why juggling all these different aspects of your role, of your company, is so difficult, especially in the industry that you're in. We're going to go to the main point, which is, of course, what are the 6 steps to growing quickly and stress-free? And then I'll tell you a little bit about how my company Growing Work can help you and your business, and any subsidies that you can use for that. We will also have plenty of time for your questions after 6 o'clock. So any questions that are really specific to your company, please wait until the end. But if during the webinar you already have any questions about what I meant by anything that's in the slide or that I said, or if I'm going too quickly, then please feel free to already ask that during the webinar. So who am I? Well, I am the founder of Growing Work. We're a business coaching and consultancy company, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do there. I'm also a regular speaker via Assembly Speakers, not quite so much live at the moment anymore in front of big crowds, but still doing a lot of webinars. I am an alumni of Radboud University. I studied international business communications there back in the 1990s, and glad to be working and living near Nijmegen again. Between then and now, between university and being a business coach and director here, I spent a lot of time traveling the world, mostly for work. So I worked for a variety of companies. One was a very large forklift truck manufacturer, where I worked for 5 years in customer service, in marketing, as a territory manager. I was part of the management team of a company that made electromechanical components for gaming machines. And I spent 5 years working for the largest service and software company when it comes to patents, trademarks, and domain names. And in that role, I met with a lot of people in life science and health. I had a lot of pharmaceutical clients, a lot of law firm clients, and I really saw what it's like there to work in a company that's growing fast, that is bound a lot of the time by their intellectual property, dynamic industry, and what does it take there to balance it? Why are some companies really successful and why are others slightly less successful? I found that really interesting. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I no longer wanted to work for external companies and be employed, but be my own boss, be a business coach, and help companies, help entrepreneurs grow their business and run it better. So I joined a company called Ology, and they're a group of business coaches. There's about 50 of them, and started coaching from there. What happened is, you might not have noticed from the accent, but I am originally Dutch. I am from Holland, obviously. I went to school, went to university there, and back in 2001, for one of my employers, I was asked to move to England. So I did, and I ended up staying there for 13 years. So hence this accent. And so 10 years ago, I came with Ology, moved back to Holland a few years ago, and started coaching here. Whilst I was in the UK, I was still voted one of the 50 best consultants of the country, which was quite an honour. And I do my best to keep up the quality levels here as well. So what do we do as Brilliant Work? Well, by now there's 9 of us. For those who are paying attention, there's 8 pictures on the screen. But we haven't got everyone up there yet. So we are business coaches, we are advisors, and we mostly help small to medium-sized businesses. So that's anything from one-man companies that started last week to companies that have been running for a very long time. And most of their questions are either around, well, how do I grow? How do I get customers or clients? How do I get turnover? And obviously, if you have a Dutch business, then usually that starts in Holland. Having said that, if you have a life science or health company, it might not automatically start in Holland. You might want to start in a different country. Or after Holland, you might quickly want to also grow in other countries. So how do we grow that business internationally? And what rules and regulations do I counter? What kind of cultural problems do I find then? How am I going to scale this up? Am I going to hire lots of people and put them all on my payroll? Or am I going to try and work through an agent or a distributor? So there's lots of questions around that. And we also help our clients to run a better internal organization. Because one of the most important lessons that I learned from traveling around the world, being a European sales manager, being a global account manager, and seeing everyone and everything from the legal counsel at Shell, huge business, to small forklift truck dealer in the south of Spain, two people, is no matter what you do, everything has an effect elsewhere in the business. So people think, oh, if we just cut a little bit of cost out of this department, everything else runs fine. But there's always an impact. So sometimes you need to step back and see, well, what's the big picture? So growing alone isn't enough. You also have to run a good internal organization. You have to lead your staff well. If you have any staff, you have to manage your finances, for example. You have to scale up your processes if you're going to grow. So all of that is connected, and every client we work with is different where they need the most help. And sometimes it depends as well where they are in their growth phase. We look at both the hard and the soft side of the business. Now, what I mean by that, the hard side is the tangible side. So the stuff you can put in a business plan. How much turnover do you want? How many clients? How much money do you need to do this? What's your production capacity? All of those hard numeric things. Equally important is the soft side. So your relationships with your clients or customers, how you communicate internally with your own staff, how you work well with other business partners, for example. that is all equally important. And what I often see is that if a coach or advisor comes in, is they come in from one of those two sides. They'll either ask you, how are you doing? Are you feeling well? Are you happy with your employees? Or they'll come in and say, show me your financial books and I will tell you if your business is doing well. And of course, there's a balance, there's a yin yang in everything. So these two have to be in balance. We were awarded Best Coaching and Consultancy Firm for Small to Medium-Sized Enterprises in Holland for 2019 by Corporate Vision magazine. And we are accredited to work on a subsidised basis through both several provinces here in Holland, as well as the Dutch government. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those subsidies later. And we do have a great deal of experience within the healthcare and life science industry, both, for example, from my own background and the background of several of my colleagues here on the left of the screen, but also, of course, since then. So I've coached a number of businesses, for example, at the Noviotech campus and other locations that are in life science and in health. And one of the things that I found is it's so different in other industries. Like if you make furniture, for example, you have a lot of time to just develop your own product and try and do it all yourself. And there's not a lot of rules and regulations and technology. But life science and health, there's so many factors. There's always a people side, because ultimately it's about someone who's going to use your products. But there's often a technology side to it as well. There's a marketing side. It is quite a complex business. And I do believe as a coach or a consultant, you don't need to know every detail about an industry, but it does help if you can put yourself in the shoes of the entrepreneur who's running it to see what isn't important. And it's so easy to lose sight of that, no matter what industry you're in. As an entrepreneur, there's so much stuff that is happening, coming, you know, your inbox is piling up, you get phone calls. What do you give priority to? So obviously that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before I do, we have time for a little poll to see a little bit about who you are. So Marion, did you want to ask the questions? Marion?
Yeah, the poll is there, so please, for the attendees, you can, if you please, you can start answering the poll. It's going to give an idea on the type of companies that we have around the table.
Okay, so as you're filling in, I'll just have a preliminary look at the results. So we have a nice mix, mostly entrepreneurs in life science and health, some in other industries, some that are employed. And I think even for those people who are employed, there's still some of the lessons will be valid to you as well, but mostly for life science and health. And there's a spike, obviously, of those companies that have been around for less than 3 years. And I think that's quite a crucial stage, because especially in life science and health, you have a limited amount of time to really scale up your production, to get enough financing to really achieve that growth. And that is a real cut-off point to see if you're going to survive or not. And the last question is, where does your strength lie when it comes to knowledge and experience? In technology and science, most of you, about a fifth in sales and marketing, and the rest in other. Now, you might wonder, why did I ask these questions? Well, first of all, to know who I have in the audience, and secondly, particularly in life science and health, I often find that there's quite a split between the people that I coach that come from a technology background and are therefore really focused on the products, the patents, the secrecy, on freedom to operate, you know, where can I actually use this product? But it's a very scientific basis. And I sometimes coach people who are more on the sales and marketing side, who are all focused about sell, sell, sell. I just want to shift as many units of this product as possible, or of this service. And what's really important is to have a balance of both, and obviously look at other aspects as well within your company. So I'm going to show you a bit of a picture.
Yeah.
And
Maybe Lisanne, before you go on, sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure what everybody has found. You can click away the poll yourself, huh? So that you see the full presentation again. Okay?
okay,
There you
yeah.
go,
If
Lisanne.
you have any technical problems with that, just put it in the chat, and Marion or John will help you with that. So one of the things that I find is if I go and talk to people in companies, is there's often a disbalance between how well developed certain aspects of their company are, or certain departments, and how underdeveloped they are. Now, you're never going to have a company where everything is a perfect 10. That's just not achievable. But what is important is the phase that you're in the development of your company, is that there's an equal distribution. So if you have a company that's only technology based and there's very little focus on cash flow, on finance, on developing the team, if there's no clear strategy on how we're going to grow the business, for example, it's doomed. If you have a company that's all about sell, 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 then they usually lack clear processes. Team development often gets ignored as well. Um, so it's really important to regularly have a look at your company. And if you were to draw this out, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be with these same titles. So I've called it team and cash flow and production and packaging and logistics, for example. You can give it different labels. But if you look at the different aspects that make up your company, are they in balance with each other? And are they as well developed as they need to be to get to the next phase of development of your company? So if we look at how companies develop over time, in the beginning, you're searching for a solution that will fit a problem. Then you get your minimally viable product. You search for the product market fit. And then you start to develop and grow. And ultimately, hopefully, you end up on the right, where you grow through acquisition, international expansion, etc. Now, this model assumes that you always follow the same path, which you might not. So growing through international expansion might actually happen fairly soon after your minimally viable product, because let's face it, if you're a Nijmegen, for example, growing internationally means getting in the car for about 20 minutes. But what is important is that you realise that you continuously need to go to the next phase, and that a lot of entrepreneurs, they go from, oh, I have a solution fit, I've developed a product or I've developed a service, I'm going to need 5 million and then I'm going to be really big. And there is no real focus on how we're going to develop the whole company, how we're going to develop the team, how we're going to keep the costs low, how are we going to really get to the market, for example. And that is really, really important. So I've, for example, recently spoken with a company where they'd already developed something, but they didn't know who was going to pay for it. Were the insurance companies, the health insurance companies going to pay for it? Was it going to be the end user who was going to pay for it? Was it going to be the healthcare provider? And that to me is something that should be really early stage. You can't develop something if you don't know who's going to buy it. So they had a real technology focus, but no customer focus. And that's really important. So that's just a little bit of background information before we kind of get to the steps. So step number 1 is you, because you cannot steer a ship if you're not doing well yourself. And this step to me was the most important, I think, when Corona hit, because when there is big crisis, mini crisis, what happens is your brain starts to produce cortisol, the stress hormone. And as soon as you produce cortisol, your ability to think clearly, to plan ahead, to come up with solutions disappears. So whenever you find yourself stressed, you need to find a way first that, rather than trying to do it all and meet everyone's demands and meet all the deadlines that you might have in your business, privately, potential investors, employees is try to see what is really, really urgent and really, really important, and put the oxygen mask on first. You know, like I say on the planes, you can't help anyone else. You know, if you run out of oxygen, you can't help anyone else. So as the entrepreneur, you're the most important person in the company, not because you're allowed to have the biggest ego, but because if you are not there, things come to a halt. So you need to be able to look after yourself, and then you can look after everyone else. Know what you don't know. So what I do find in these companies that, for example, have a skewed focus either on technology or on sales and marketing or on something else, is the people aren't aware of what they don't know. Now, this might be a strange phrase, but for example, when you first took a driving lesson, you probably thought, this is really easy. I've seen my parents do it for 18 years. How hard can it be to drive a car? Well, as we all know, it can be bloody hard. If it's icy, if it's dark, if there's lots of traffic, for example, if you're tired, it can be really hard. And when you take your first driving lesson, it's the same. You all of a sudden realize you don't know what a stick does, how you change gears, that you need to indicate before you change lanes. And it's the same thing when you run a business. You start a business, you have a great idea, and you don't know what you don't know. So it's really important to try and broaden your look and actually see, well, how does my business score on all of these aspects? And when we go to the next stage, what do I need to know then to make sure we're a success? A common misconception I find is, especially when people get stressed, is they feel like there's only one way out. So they say, I have to hit this mark or my investors will pull the plug, it'll be the end of my business. So there's an assumption that, you know, if you look at the picture of this maze, that there is only one way to get out. And sometimes there's more than one way to get out. So it's really important when you are feeling stressed is not to think in a single option. You might have a preferred solution. You might say, well, the best thing will be if we hit this deadline, we got the investors in, and that would be the best way to make a success out of the business. For example, recently I was coaching a client and they said, look, we're not going to make the deadline to deliver the product to a client. So we can either keep harassing the manufacturer that physically makes the product for us because they're outsourcing their production, and just get really stressed about it, or we can go to the client and say, we're really sorry, we're not going to be able to make it in time anyway. With the holiday season upon us, it's probably not great to install the product over the summer holidays anyway, because there won't be anyone that we can train up on the product. So why don't we just move it out a bit? So sometimes there are actually ways that you can take the stress off and still get to a good result. And yes, it wasn't ideal because they were going to get paid a little bit later, but it probably meant that there were going to be a lot less arguments, a lot less stress, and overall the customer was going to be a lot happier, resulting in more sales afterwards. So you always, always, always have options. That's really important. If you have any advisors that tell you that you don't have an option without explaining exactly why, so unless it's a law, unless it's a clear regulation that you understand, then you always have an option. So that's step number one. Step number two is your company's goals. Now, what I find in most of the life science and health companies, especially around the Novotech campus and Briskr, is they have goals. So there are general goals. Obviously, if they want to show investors that they are ready to be invested in, you know, this is how many of the products we want to sell, or this is how many products we want to bring to market. There are some kind of goals. That's really important. But are they specific enough? Are they really realistic? Have you put clear deadlines against them? Are they inspiring? Are they inspiring to your team? For example, if you have staff or people who work with you in some kind of capacity, I often see they're not up to date. So if someone's written a business plan 5 years ago and they haven't updated it since. So what we normally do with the client is we actually make sure that the goals are up to date and in a very visual format that you can stick on the wall and you can see every day if you put them near the water cooler, for example. Because it fixates your mind on what is really important. If you constantly see that your goal is in year 3 to have 3 products and you're constantly only working on product 1, for example, then you realize that this isn't going to get you there on time. If you realize that you're working for a global market and this is where you want to get to, but all you're doing on a daily basis is working on Dutch clients, Dutch prospects, then you realize that it's not in line. So these goals, they fixate your mind on what is important. It's the part of your brain, the reticular activation system, RAS, that's the filter of your brain. If you see these goals all the time, it will automatically sort what is important, what is relevant, and what is not relevant. And so all these emails that end up in your inbox that are not relevant for your goals, your brain will automatically say, okay, we can forget about those. We will unsubscribe from this email. We will reply to people and say, thanks very much, but this doesn't fit the picture, at least not for the next year. So that's really important. So update them. Make sure every year you have new goals and that you look at both the short term and the long term. So obviously you need to divide these things up into milestones as well and say, for example, year 1, year 2, year 3. In your business, it might even be quarter 1, quarter 2, etc. And then you need to obviously come up with a plan of action, because it's great to have those goals, but how are you going to achieve them? And I've added the picture here of the easy way, because that's what you want. I often see people that come up with really elaborate plans of all the different things they're going to do. When we write an action plan, what we usually do is actually make up a 1-year plan where we're going to say, what are the 3 or the 4 most important things that you're going to focus on this year? What is it that you definitely want to achieve? Have a minimally viable product? Do you want to have test markets? Do you want to grow your team to 8 people? What is it that you really want to focus on? And then divide them up into actions that you need to take. So call your patent lawyer and get it registered in these 15 countries. Raise 100,000 euros in finance. Write job specs for your team. What is it that you actually need to do? So make this plan really specific, and it's not a business plan. And I just want to reiterate this. So people think that a business plan is an action plan. It rarely is. To me, and everyone can have a different definition of it, a business plan is a lengthy Word document, sometimes PDF or PowerPoint, it doesn't matter, usually Word document. It's really long, and it describes in detail the whole reason why your product or service exists, why there's a big market for it, how you're going to do everything. It's got lots of pretty pictures in it, graphics. A business plan usually is meant to convince an investor to put some money in you, or to convince a bank to lend you some money, or it convinces a potential other company to work with you and understand more about your business. A business plan is rarely for you. It is almost always for someone else, and it tends to end up either in a drawer or on the back of your hard drive, because people don't look at it. So an action plan to me is a 1-page plan that you can stick on the wall, and it's just for the foreseeable future. So it might be 6 months or 12 months, and it tells you who is going to do what, by when, and how. And it constantly reminds you, just like with the goals, it reminds you of what you actually need to do. And the reason that it's important is it tells you what you therefore don't do, because you're not going to have the time to do a lot of things that aren't on the poster. And a lot of the time businesses fail because people do all sorts of things, they mean well, but they don't contribute to the next step, to the next goal. And therefore this action plan is really, really important. And of course, it has to be aligned with the short and the long-term goals. So we usually get the goals from the goals poster and write them on the action plan and say, these are the things that we want to set in motion this year that will help us not just hit our goals in year one, so for example, have a minimally viable product, but it will also help us for when we do scale up to the all singing, all dancing products. So you're constantly switching between short-term and long-term thinking and goals, and that's really important. Um, I would say often in life science and health, there are two types, the thinkers and the doers. And the thinkers often are the people from a technology background, not necessarily, it can be the other way around. And the doers sometimes are the sales and marketing people, it can be the other way around. The difference is a thinker has thought of 68 different ways that they can do this, they've talked about everyone extensively, but they keep going around in circles. They don't actually do anything, or they do it much slower than they could. The doers, they go out and they just do, and they don't give it any thought at all. They just go on their gut instinct and they do. And where the balance comes in once again is between the thinking and the doing. So before you do, think, talk it over, write it down, but also don't think extensively and for 5 years or 10 years. Go out and do things. Launch a beta version. So, for example, a lot of the really successful businesses in the States, if you look at IT businesses, are because they launch a beta version. They go out onto the market with something that isn't perfect yet. A lot of people thought about it, they put time and effort into it, but they put it out before it's perfect. And they perfect it along the way. Step number 4 is the product versus the mass market. So this is once again the balance between your product, which is probably could be a service as well, which is probably technologically sound or you're working on improving it, and knowing who your market is and do they actually want your product, and is the market big enough that your company is really financially viable to get to this. Now, I put mass market between brackets because obviously some of you will be in a niche market and to say, look, we're not going to want every consumer. But even if you only want people who wear contact lenses and have diabetes, for example, you still don't want 3 of them. You want everyone on the planet who wears contact lenses and has diabetes, or maybe who has those 2 things and lives in a certain number of defined countries. So have a look whether that aligns. And of course, when something big happens like Corona, it is very important to just step back and look for a second and see, is my product or service still the right combination with the market that I have in mind? So has my market disappeared? Has it shifted? Has it become bigger? So for example, Zoom all of a sudden found that there was always a market for video calling. But all of a sudden the acceptance, the willingness for people to use Zoom went through the roof. People organizing physical conferences, meetings had a problem because you couldn't do that. So all of a sudden there wasn't a fit. So you need to think about your product. Are you going to change it? For example, for me, I used to give a lot of physical workshops. For example, at the Nova Tech campus, you can't do that anymore, but you can give a webinar. So you need to constantly think, well, how does my product or my service fit with the market, or do I need to amend it? Either finding a different market or amending my product, for example. And is there a good balance in my plan for that? And also in my team. And sometimes going abroad really helps. So I often see companies that are just so focused on the Dutch market or the Western European markets, where actually a developing market like Africa or Latin America might be a better fit. So I have a really big think about that. Money. It's always about the money. So make sure you always have a good, up-to-date, easy to understand cash flow forecast. Don't be fooled by profit and loss statements. You can make a lot of money on the books. It's about how much cash is ultimately in your business, because you only need to be out of cash for a couple of weeks to be bankrupt. And that is where, it's not enough just in your business plan to say what in year 1 or year 2 or year 3 we're going to make a profit. In which month are you going to have the biggest dip? And is something like Corona, for example, going to affect your cash flow? Now, when I was giving one of these similar presentations a few months ago, when Corona felt even more pressing, more urgent, I put my money a little bit earlier on in the sequence. But ideally, you don't want to be reigned by money. Ideally, you want to be reigned by your customers, your team, your product. But money is really, really important. So sometimes if you have to choose, money does come first, just so you can keep going. I often hear people saying, well, if I need money, I can either just go to a bank, and if the banks won't lend me any money, I have to go to a business angel. And they are two very reasonable options, but there is so much more to financing. Now, there are other workshops given by other people who focus much more on how to finance a company. I'm not going to go into great detail about that today because we haven't got the time for that. But there is so much more. You can get crowdfunding, get money from family, friends, and friends. You can go to venture capitalists. There are other organizations like NL Investeerders, for example, where you can get money, which is basically held by people who've already earned the money as an entrepreneur and now want to invest in others. There are so many different ways to finance a project. Subsidies can be a great one too. Funds, social funds, environmental funds. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can get money. And that's really important. And it kind of ties in with one of the earlier lessons, is there's more than one way to go about things. Make money early. I sometimes cannot believe these businesses that run for 10, 20 years and expect not to make any money. Now, obviously, if you're in Silicon Valley and your name is Mark Zuckerberg, and there's people throwing money at you and saying, it's okay, you don't need to make anything back yet until 2030, then that's great. And I don't underestimate how difficult it is in life science and health to develop something, to test it, try it, clinical testing, apply for patents. I know how lengthy the procedures are. But if you have something that you can bring to market early, anything at all, do that. The sooner you can make your own money and the sooner you can talk to clients that are willing to give you money for something that you're offering, the better you will understand your market and the more of a real chance you have of conquering the market. If your whole business just runs on holding up your hand to investors, to banks, to the government for subsidies, how closely connected are you going to be to your market, and how big is the chance going to be that ultimately you are financially viable? So try and get in somehow with some products early on, is my advice. And keep your costs low. You often don't need a massive in-house team to start off with. So outsource things, any aspect. I have a virtual assistant, for example, someone who does some of my administrative work. I don't employ her 40 hours a week. There's not enough work for her there. But it does keep the costs low, and it keeps the company very flexible, very agile. So that's really important. And it might feel like, if you do have investors and you've got 5 million euros burning a hole in your pocket that you can go out and spend, but it does shorten the lifespan before you then have got a cash flow problem again. So really keep your costs low. And step number 6 is get some help. Find out who do you need to succeed, because as I mentioned earlier at the start, you might not know what you don't know. So get people around you that can help you to succeed. And sometimes that can be your neighbor, your aunt or uncle, it can be former colleagues, it can be current colleagues, be all sorts of things. And there's obviously a great support system. Organizations like Briskr, the province, There are so many organizations that are out there just to help you, and a lot of them will do it for free, and some of them will charge you a small fee. But try and build that ecosystem around you, because the chances of you succeeding on your own or with a small team, 2, 3 people, are pretty slim. And the more heads you stick together, the more you'll know. And even though, we have e-commerce companies as clients as well, digital marketing is really, really important. Ultimately, the live network as well is really important. So having these people around you that in turn share their network with you as well is really going to help you to succeed. But in order for them to know how they can help you, they need to understand what your goals are and what your main actions are for this year. That is where the goals and the action plan come in again, making a logical story. For example, sometimes I have clients who tell me, well, I filed a patent for this in Holland and France and Germany. I said, but did you actually first work out which countries you wanted to conquer with your product, or which competitors you want to license your technology to? And then we come to a very different picture. So if you work out first what your end game is, what your strategy is, then it's much easier to go, for example, to your patent lawyer or to your accountant or anyone else and say, well, this is where I want to get to. Now, can you help me with your network, with your knowledge to succeed in this way? Make sure that the people in your network have the time to help you, have the expertise, that preferably in the right location. So, for example, if you need to find out what potential customers in the United States want, get a local contact. Obviously, you can do a lot of things via Skype or other means, but try and find people who are in the right location that fit within your budget. I sometimes meet people who, from day one, they've got a team of 1 or 2 people, they've got no money, and they go to the biggest law firms with the biggest price tag. And I don't understand, because you don't have the money to do that yet. So make sure that, first of all, people that you work with have got the time and the expertise, but it does fit within your budget. And if you haven't got enough budget now, then figure out together how you're going to get the budget to hire the people that you do need. And does it fit all with the growth phase that you're in? So look at which growth phase am I in now? What's important at the moment, but also what's the next phase I want to be in? And does that team fit that nicely? So that's a bit about the 6 steps. I hope that they're all clear. If they're not clear, then feel free to raise your hand or ask any questions through the chat function. And if not, I'll have to go on with the rest of the slides. So how do we help you? There's just a picture of me and a few of my colleagues. Well, our coaches are all experienced entrepreneurs, so they know what it's like to be in your shoes. And where we have the focus is on helping you grow your business, how to internationalize it, and to make sure that it's running smooth internally. Almost all of our coaching is either free or subsidized. So in the next slide, I'll show you some of the subsidies that you can use. And I was amazed when I moved back here 6 years ago. I thought, well, I'll have a look and see what subsidies they are. And I thought there's probably nothing, especially because 6 years ago, Holland wasn't entirely out of the recession yet. And there are so many floating about. Now, some of you might know some of the technical subsidies, like ABSO, for developing your R&D. There's a lot of subsidies when it comes to environment as well, energy transition, for example, but there are plenty of subsidies too that focus on business growth, on managing your staff well, on growing internationally, and hardly anyone knows them. You can really use our knowledge and our experience. So like myself, my colleagues have also worked in corporate life first, and have come across all sorts of different industries that they've worked in. Most of us have lived and worked abroad as well. And so, you get the benefit of that knowledge and that experience. And we have an awesome network of clients, of other businesses that we know, the government that we're aligned with, the province, the councils, And that is just so important because, like I said, you need a whole team of people around you to help you succeed. So that together is really important in making sure that you overcome your hurdles a lot faster, that you don't feel like you're doing things on your own, that you have to come up with your own solutions all of the time. We have lots of knowledge of subsidies and other free services. So, for example, if you want to get some information on different countries, on what's the market like there, are any rules and regulations that would stop us from going into this country, for example, what are the customs like over there, then we can get you those free market reports. And they're not just generic reports, they can be really specific. So if you want to know who your main competitors will be in that country, or potential distributors, we can get you all of that information. And we are really lots of different things all rolled into one. So we're a sparring partner. You know, who else will sit and talk to you for 2 hours about your business? I don't know about you, but if I spoke to my husband for 2 hours at a stretch just about my company, without asking anything about his day, he'd probably get a little bit bored. And the people that work for you or with you have got their own priorities as well. So we're there just to be your sparring partner. We can train you and your team on any skills, things like sales skills, leadership skills, communication skills. We're your biggest supporter. Any which way we can help you, we will. And we're also a critical eye when needed. So I've been coaching a client for a couple of years now. He's got different businesses. And he came to me recently and he said, oh, I want your help now with this business. I want to get lots of funding for it. And I said, well, just show me the business plan of what you've written so far. And he had, and it really was a mess. There's nothing else I can say about it. It really didn't have a leg to stand on. And he'd sent it not just to me, but someone else who's in the business of fundraising. And she phoned me up and she said, I can't do anything with this plan because it has no foundation. And this is where I can go back to my clients and say, look, as it is, we can't use it. But you and I will sit down together and we will build it up to a great business plan where it does have legs and people understand what you want the funding for, how you're going to use it, why they should give you the money. So we can also be critical, but in a positive way, in a way of, you know, finding a solution for you, because that's ultimately what you want. So some of the subsidies. Well, if you have a business where you want to grow internationally, where you haven't got any clients abroad yet, or you already do, but you would like to pick it up more strategically and really grow in a clear, rational way, or faster way, then you get us completely for free for 16 hours. Now, 16 hours might not seem like a lot, but usually our coaching sessions are about 2 hours at a time. So depending on what else you need us to do, that could be as many as 8 sessions that you're sitting down with us. This is a really easy subsidy. I can apply it for you. It takes about 10 minutes. We've done it 140 times before, and it's really easy to get. Any companies in Gelderland or Overijssel that are less than 6 years old, any shareholder can get €1,000 per person to spend on coaching, and another €1,000 to do any training in their field of work. So, for example, if you're a really technically focused person, if that's your role in the company, you can get technical training. If you're the salesperson, you can get sales training with it. Now, the training part you don't spend with us, you can spend it with any educational organisation that you choose. If you're a company in Gelderland and you would like to grow, if you'd like to scale up, then you can get up to €10,000 in subsidies. We can help you with that, and our coaching is covered by that. And if you want to develop your staff, if you feel like there's maybe a slight disconnect, or you want to see if there is a disconnect between what skills and attitude your staff need and where your company needs to be in terms of skills and attitudes of the people within it, or how your people would like to develop, then there's a €25,000 subsidy as well that can cover our coaching. And really come up with a clear plan of action for how to develop all of those staff, how to do better appraisals, how to write better development plans, to coach the managerial level, for example, on how to have those conversations. Then we can do all of that. Brexit advice is also covered by a subsidy. And yes, I'm the one within the team who does most of the Brexit advice. And there's lots of other subsidies. For example, if you want to go to a trade show, if you want to, pay for your patent or trademark lawyer, for example, Ariane, you might already be doing this. There's lots and lots of different subsidies, and we can point the way there and help you figure them out. So if you want to grow quickly and stress-free, then I would suggest that we look at your goals together, see if you already have any, if they're up to date, and if we need to make new ones. Make a plan of action together. That can be an export plan, a sales and marketing plan, team development plan, or just an overall business action plan. And we really help you in its execution. So it's not just about coming in and saying, well, this is what you need to do. Here's the plan. Good luck. Now go and do it. Because that rarely works. We stay with you until you are completely happy. So the first client that we got here in Holland, we've been working with for 3.5 years. We're still there. In England, I had clients for up to 5 years. Some clients after 3 months are happy, they have everything they need. So it's not like you have to stay with us for years, but if that's what we want, if you want the long-term sparring partner, then that's what you can have. So for anyone who's interested, who just wants to have some more information and a casual chat, we can put a date in the diary to see what we can do for you. So you can connect with me via email or via LinkedIn, for example. And I hope to hear from you. So that was the general presentation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lizanne. Many very practical tips and tricks. So thank you very much for that. We still have a little bit of time, so if there is anybody who wants to ask a question through chat or by raising, you can on the right, on the bottom, you can have reaction and raise your hand. So we give you, we ask you to open your mic and ask microphone and ask a question.
Yeah, what I would say is, if no questions come to mind yet, is, what are the biggest challenges in your company? And what do you find sometimes, if you go to work on Monday morning, and what do you find the hardest thing to do? Or what keeps you up? We're thinking, where am I going to spend my time now? Might be quite a hard one to share with the whole audience. So if you want to start with the lighter one, you can. But what are some of the things that you find are difficult to juggle? And I'll just ask Miguel, for example. Miguel, ¿estás ahí? Maybe he's going to get some...
Yes, I'm here.
Muy bien. Okay, so I'm just going to put you on the spot. Maybe what are some of the things that you find difficult to balance, to put priority in your company?
Well, I guess that in our case, it's mostly the regulations. Well, regulations are the most critical part when you want to put any kind of intelligent thing in a hospital or in a clinic. So data privacy right now is becoming a big issue due to Corona. So there are, I guess, that the biggest delays on putting anything into a pilot or
yeah.
Exactly. So that takes up a lot of your time, I suppose. And if you spend all of your time and effort on that, what are the things that you don't get around to doing that you would like to do?
Well, I like to do everything. I like to develop my company regarding the technology and the solutions that the clients need. I mean, that's what I like to do. I enjoy a lot to understand exactly what are the needs and how to translate it to a technical solution, and then the technical solution simplify it and bring it back to the client. That's what I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
However, there I believe I see that there is more to the story of just growing the company. I don't find it like that straight and simple as just saying I have a product and I'm gonna make a marketing campaign and people is going to buy it and so on. I don't see it that simple in the healthcare market, at least. In the life science
Yeah, of
market,
course, the picture I showed
super
makes it
complicated.
sound like it's a very linear and simple process. And of course, sometimes it's messy and it just goes around in circles.
Yeah,
Um, and it does that. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's I
Okay,
guess that's the
okay,
worst.
yeah. Thank you, Miguel and Lizanne. I see there is Arjen would like to make a remark. Arjen, can you
Yeah.
unmute? Yes, thank you.
Okay. Maybe nice to know, Lisanne. Our merging process is guided by one of your colleagues, Ivar.
mhm.
And to our satisfaction, I have to mention as well so far. Uh, so that's good. That was just my short remark from my side.
Okay, well, thanks, and great to hear that Ivar's doing a good job for you as always. So awesome.
Great. All right. Any other remarks or questions? Otherwise, we passed 4 o'clock. If not so, I want to again thank you very much, Lizanne, for a great presentation. I'm
I
not
want to do
sure
a
what I
poll
have
on
less
some.
stress now. Please don't go yet. We want to have a little poll on this seminar. So please stay a moment with us. Again, thank you very much. We're going to share the PowerPoint presentation, and of course, you have seen the details on how you can reach either Lisanne, of course, or of course ourselves. So yeah, if you can please fill in the poll, and thank you very much, and hope to see you in future.
Okay. Well, thanks to John and Marion for organising it, and thank you all for listening and for filling out the poll. And once you've filled out the poll, then I wish you a very good rest of the afternoon.